Hello and welcome to Odds on Champions League. Our favorite competition is back with Dani Fisichella, with Alvaro Romeo. Hello, guys.
Ciao.
To analyze the groups we have on Wednesday. So let's analyze 8 games, very good games. Again, with Alvaro, with Dani, with you guys. We are already 20,000 subscribers in this channel. So if you are not a subscriber, you have the button to click here and, of course, press the like and subscribe. And now let's go on with the show. Let's start with Group A before, of course, that we analyze this Galatasaray Copenhagen. To start with, if you are looking for a bookmaker, we have 1xBet, a great partnership with them. You can get up to 130% in the welcome bonus. Just use this promo code and you have the link in the description. We have many Turkish people in this channel, and I'm sure many of them are looking forward to analyzing this Galatasaray Copenhagen, because Galatasaray, they are back in the Champions League since 2019. They were not playing in the group stage, and we have important faces. Alvaro, in Galatasaray, for instance, Icardi scoring plenty of goals. If they want to do something and perhaps put a fight to Man United for the second spot, they must beat Copenhagen at home.
100%. They have to. And you mentioned Mauro Icardi. Well, Icardi to score, because that was one of the first things that I thought of, is 191. I could happily back something like this, because this game, I think that is going to have a few goals. I think Galatasaray, for the first time in a while, not only they got themselves good players, but they got themselves good players in their prime. Of course, they had to go through the rounds to qualify. They negotiated 3. They've got a great squad. I repeat again, not players at the brink of retirement, and they have made a massive effort and a big investment. The likes of Davinson Sanchez, Angelino, Mertens, Icardi, Zaha, Ziyech, obviously. There will be team news. Sorry?
It's a good team. It's a good team.
No. It really is. And, some of the players are 29, 30. Mertens obviously is older. But check the team news just in case, because injuries may happen and all that. But Icardi to score 191 is a good one for me, definitely. I think that this time they really have a chance of qualifying. For the first time in a while. I know that the group is not easy, obviously, but I saw Manchester United the other day and I wasn't too convinced. I think that they suffer in the transitions. They don't have very clear ideas about how to play the ball from the back. And maybe Galatasaray can take some advantage of all this against Copenhagen. I think that they have a good manager in Jakob Nistrup, and they arrived here by beating the Polish side, Krakow. But yeah, I got the feeling that with the good team that Galatasaray has and the competent footballers they've got as well, this could be a really nice feast for Galatasaray. Not necessarily a perfect one. I can see them conceding as well. But I'm gonna go for over 2.5 goals in this game, 173. That pays a little bit better than Galatasaray winning, even though Galatasaray winning is by no means a crazy thing, 161. But normally this odds 160 for the winner at home normally is just for the very big sides, in my opinion. So I'm going to go for over 2.5 goals and Icardi to score.
Actually, Dani, this is a very good point. When I was checking the odds, I think Galatasaray, they are favorite, but 1.6 at home, they don't have this pedigree in Europe to be this favorite.
No, because after all, they won the Turkish league last year after 7 years of absence. And we mentioned they are full of talent. They got an up-and-coming manager in Okan Buruk, used to play for Inter. But, the likes of Mertens, Aktürkoğlu, by the way, very good winger. I like him when he plays for Turkey as well. We haven't mentioned Lucas Torreira, Demir Bay as an alternative, Ziyech, Zaha. So there is a lot there. Obviously, the challenge here is for Okan Buruk to put them all together and to make sure there are not prima donnas. By the way, Icardi already 7 goals this season. I think he's one of the most prolific strikers in Europe, and the goal he scored against Molde away, it's a pitch of a goal. They've got good experience in Europe. Galatasaray in 2021, 2022, they topped their group with Lazio. They were unbeaten at home. So, you know, I think they're a good side. Obviously, the defense might be a little bit concerning. They conceded 3 against Molde. So normally the Galatasaray games are full of goals, scoring 7 out of 8 games this season. Last season, they only lost 2 games at home, failing to score only 1. So normally when they play at Alisa Mien, you know, they make it count. And Copenhagen, on the other hand, you might think, well, they got more experience in the Champions League than Galatasaray, at least recent experience. They're probably the best team from the north of Europe, from the Scandinavian peninsula, but still, they are far away from the quality of other sides in Europe. Last season, they drew all the home games. They were in a very tough group with Man City, but they managed to draw even against Man City. Never scored away last season in the Champions League. They qualified by the playoff, won on penalties against Sparta Prague. They are not a high-scoring side. And if we look at the players that play for them, the 2 stand out for me are Elionussi, used to play in England for Southampton, Grabara, the goalkeeper, Polish, made a lot of saves last season, but again, will they feature in any top side in Europe? Probably not. And then you got some players who done the rounds in Europe. Dennis Vavro used to play for Lazio. Larreger used to play for Genoa. The son of Eric Larsson, Jordan Larsson, plays for them after a disappointing season at Schalke. Klaasson is a Swedish national. And there is a 2006 player, Bargi, who could be maybe the revelation of this group. Definitely they were the weakest team in pot 3. Where can they have a little bit of advantage is the fact that they played already 14 competitive games. So maybe their physical condition is a little bit ahead because obviously the league started earlier, 2-2 at the weekend. And when I said earlier, they are the best team in Northern Europe. Last season, they lost 9 games at home, yet they won the 2nd consecutive title. So are they Champions League material? Actually, I don't know. I mean, they weren't unbeatable even at home. For me, this is a Galatasaray win, and I think it's a comfortable win. I'm gonna go for a nation handicap -1 for the Turkish side, which pays well, 205.
Well, to be the best team in Northern Europe, Dani, they had to beat the Faroe Island representative in the Champions League.
They had to beat the Faroe Island, but they are playing in the Europa League, the Faroe Island, the Conference League. Look, this. Remember Iceland a few years ago? Now football is global, and we've seen it at the recent World Cup. Even small teams, you know, if they're well coached, well drilled, they can put you under pressure.
Well, let's go to the big guns. My favorite game this week in the Champions League is Bayern Munich, Man United, especially interesting after another defeat from the Red Devils, this time at home against Brighton. 3 defeats already. There are people already putting pressure on Ten Hag. Can be he axed soon? Perhaps yes. After 2 years, they come back to the Champions League. They were knocked out from the group in that point, so the pressure is on the Red Devils, but Dani, also on Bayern Munich, I would say, because Tuchel had a bad experience last season when he arrived to Bayern Munich. It was tough. They played against Man City, but there is always a lot of pressure when we talk about Bayern and the Champions League.
Both sides are far from perfect at the moment, and they can only improve, but obviously the manager's fate depends how quickly they will improve. Tuchel last season won the Bundesliga basically in the last minute of the last game because Dortmund threw it away, and he was heavily criticized. In the summer, they strengthened the squad with Kim Min-jae from Napoli, Kane, of course, the big signing, already scored 45 goals in UEFA competition, Konrad Laimer. So they have got a stronger squad. But not everything went to plan. This summer, we learn that even for Bayern, sometimes it's difficult to sign players. They let go Pavard to Inter. They couldn't find a replacement in the last day of the transfer market. They took the pictures with Joao Palhinha from Fulham, couldn't sign him. And I think they might be a little bit short in midfield and in defense. I think they'll cruise through the group, but obviously the key question is when it comes March, and February, the cracks might start to open. Last season in the group, they were easily the best team, 18 goals scored, 2 conceded, 6 wins, beat Inter home and away, yet Inter reached the final. Bayern, he didn't. And they haven't started the season that well. Only 1 clean sheet in the last 5. Drew 2-2 at the weekend against Bayern Leverkusen. It shows that still they are not at a great level against top oppositions. So I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park for Bayern Munich this game. But normally at home, they're very reliable. And obviously, they face a team that is more in a mess than them at the moment. Manchester United, again, in the summer, they spend a lot. But the question is, have they actually improved the team enough? They got two good holding midfielders now in Amrabat and Casemiro. Højlund, who is a promising striker. But the injuries obviously are a concern for them. They're without Shaw, without Mount, without Varane, and they lost at the weekend against Brighton. That was the first defeat in 31 home games. They were too easy to unpick from Brighton. Brighton found the gaps and play from the back too easy. They lacked a lot of width. Manchester United play with a diamond, with Scott McTominay in the number 8 position. Probably that's the best position for him, with Casemiro and Eriksen in the midfield. Look, they got off the pitch issues, of course, with Sancho, with Greenwood, with Anthony, and this seems to cast a shadow on the Den Haag's work. I think against Arsenal, in the defeat 2-1, they were unlucky. Could have won, got a goal disallowed in the last minute. But also, they feature a defense with Evans and Maguire. That's the centre-back from Leicester 2018 in front of Onana. I don't think that's good enough. 6 points from 5 games, worst start of the league since 1989. Only kept 2 away clean sheets in the last 9 games from Manchester United. I think Bayern could win this comfortably, but not in a high-scoring game. I'm going to go for under 3.25 goals, 192, which means if there are only 3 goals in the game, you win half a stake.
Impossible, Alvaro, not to back Bayern Munich with all these terrible starts from Man United. You also see the situation this black for the Red Devils?
Okay, let's see the reality of Manchester United. The last time they won a Champions League was in 2008. The last time they won a league title was in 2013. They got a problem. There is a team like Manchester City that whatever you do in the league, you look silly in front of them. And this has been the tragedy for every Premier League side. No matter how good Manchester United does, no matter how much they reach their own potential, they will never win the Premier League right now if Guardiola stays at Manchester City. And this is something that obviously depresses a lot some Premier League sides. And I think that Manchester United was depressed about that in the past. Now it's not even. I remember that Jose Mourinho got 81 points. That season was very good for Manchester United, and Manchester City got 100. So this is the reality, and I think Manchester United is adapting to it. Even this summer has been a little bit underwhelming. They got new players. None of them are going to fix the things very easily for Manchester United, that's for sure. I think that Rasmus Højlund is a very promising prospect. The other day, by the way, when Erik ten Hag moved him or removed him from the pitch, there were boos to the substitution, maybe to Ten Hag as well. But I think that Manchester United, last season, they did a good season considering the standards of the Premier League. It's impossible to take the league away from Manchester City unless you do something miraculous like Liverpool did in 2020. It's very difficult.
But sorry, Alvaro, if you look at Arsenal last season, they went all the way.
No, but let me continue because I haven't finished with this. But there is a middle point between catching up with Manchester City and what Manchester United is now. This is what I wanted to get. Manchester United last season, they reached the FA Cup final. They won the Carabao Cup, which was the first title since 2017, and they finished 3rd in the league. This is good for Manchester United, but since spring, they saw a massive decline that has been transferred to this season. Because if you remember the game at Sánchez Pizjuán, Manchester United didn't lay a glove. They were a joke. They were an absolute joke against Sevilla. And I think that ending of the season has been contagious and is coming into this season as well. The other day, against Brighton and Hove Albion, Manchester United didn't have many options up front because with the departure of Greenwood, with Sancho and Anthony being out of the squad right now, even though they are still getting paid, as far as I know, but they are not training with the team. Manchester United has only 4 options up front: Rashford, Martial, Højlund, and Garnacho. And I don't think that Erik ten Hag trusts a lot on Garnacho. In fact, the other day, he was one of the last substitutions, a player who has played already 3 games for Argentina. So I think that even Ten Hag doesn't trust some of his players so much, and they've got many injuries, and Casemiro is suffering a lot. The other day, he didn't suffer in the transitions from Brighton, but on the other hand, every time he was getting the ball, he was sloppy, he was miscontrolling it, and he was giving it away. They were taking it from him. Even players like Danny Welbeck or Adam Lallana, who are not particularly the masters of pressure. It's not a good moment for Manchester United. The defense without Varane is different. Lisandro is still limping. I guess that he will play, but he's suffering from many injuries. So let's see how they do. But I think Bayern is the favorite here, because Bayern, contrary to Manchester United, they can change the game from the bench. In the second half, they can bring in players who can make the difference. And they've got probably the second or the third best striker in the world, Harry Kane. I mean, and Bayern is enjoying a great time right now, but they didn't lose with the team who is grabbing all the headlines right now, like Bayer Leverkusen. They are still staging in the games. So I'm going to back Bayern to win. It pays 160. And Bayern to win and over 1.5 goals in the game is 170. I like this one even more because the value is pretty decent. And I think that this is not a certainty, but I think that Bayern is going to win and scoring a couple of goals.
Huge game, this one at the Allianz. Bayern also conceding a lot of goals in the Bundesliga, so it could be both teams to score, a high-scoring game, because Bayern, especially defensively, they are far from perfect. Let's move on to the next group. This one is also very interesting, Group B. Here we have Arsenal, PSV, and Sevilla Lens. First stop at the Emirates. Finally, Champions League is back to North London, or to the Emirates specifically, since 2017. It was the last time they played, and actually at that time they were absolutely thrashed by Bayern Munich 1-5 and 5-1. Good start of the season, Alvaro, for Arsenal. Beat Everton at the weekend. Should they be careful with PSV? The odds are absolutely low for Arsenal.
Yeah.
If you ask me, I wouldn't trust these low odds on Arsenal coming back to the Champions League.
I don't know. They beat Everton the other day, and they beat them not comfortably because the scoreline was 1-0, but they deserve to win that game. Look, one thing that Arsenal had last year, and they don't have now, last year they had a stream of chances coming out of them. By 20 minutes of the game, they would have shot on target 3 or 4 times and generated a lot of scoring opportunities. This season, Arsenal is slightly different, and they have lost probably Martinelli for the game against PSV Eindhoven, because yesterday he left the pitch in the first half, limping. By the way, Martinelli had scored a goal that was disallowed for Arsenal, but Arsenal won. And I think that the good thing about Arsenal is that they've got plenty of players who have still to prove themselves in Europe. Last season, they couldn't reach the final stages of the Europa League. That was a little bit of a surprise, probably, considering that they were fighting for the Premier League. And this season, they've got the likes of Saliba, Gabriel Magalhaes, Ben White. Who else is over there? Declan Rice hasn't played in the Champions League, and many more footballers that they want to prove themselves there. In fact, they've got a Champions League winner, like Kai Havertz, for example. But other than that, I think the team is young, and they are eager to show that they are capable of they belong to the Champions League. Let's put it that way. Interesting thing about the weekend is that David Raya became the goalkeeper of Arsenal. I think that Arteta is going to have a little bit of rotation. Yesterday, I was thinking with my colleague Leo Bachanian, who commentated the game with me, Arsenal-Everton, that probably the game against Spurs is going to define who is the goalkeeper of Arteta. The game against the Spurs is coming the next weekend. But, David Raya played the other day. Havertz, Ramsdale, Gabriel Jesus were some of the omissions. Instead, Raya or Nketiah played, and Fabio Vieira, and they played really well. I like Arsenal. I think that Trossard scored the super team goal the other day, and I'm going to back Arsenal. I know that the odds for them to win are ridiculously low, but I still believe that they can win the first half. So them to win the first half, 187, or them to win at 30 minutes, because I expect them to trigger and to unchain the scoring stream and the chances stream that they were unchaining last season, they expect them to do it this time. Arsenal to win at 30 minutes, 2.2.
Well, PSV were unchained, Dani, against Rangers at the playoff. Luke de Jong, a striker that we saw also with the Netherlands, scoring goals. He's scoring plenty of goals in this start of the season. There could be an upset here for Arsenal?
Potentially not an upset, but I could see both teams scoring, and that's my pick, by the way. Both teams to score 184. Last season, PSV Eindhoven, had they not sold Gakpo and Madueke in January, I think they could have challenged for the title much better than what they did in the end. They finished second, and this is the last time they're in the Champions League was in 2019. In the summer, they've used those money to buy Noah Lang from Bruges, which is an interesting signing. They got a new manager in Peter Bosch. We know is very eccentric, and his teams can go completely wrong, can unravel in a few weeks, as it happened with Lyon. But obviously, he's a progressive and modern manager. So if things go well, they could be a good surprise in this group. Against Rangers, they were fantastic. They were past them. They scored a lot of goals. They scored 26 goals in the last 8 games, won 4-0 at the weekend. They got a lot of options at the front. So it's up to Bosch to find the best partners up front. Of course, now with the return of Irving Lozano, won the title with Napoli. Also Riccardo Pepi, the US international. Saibari, a young player, could be the surprise. Maybe defensively and in the goalkeeper section, they don't look as strong. But when I say both to score, it's because Arsenal have a bad tendency, which is to concede goals, especially at home. Have conceded in 10 of the last 12 home games, actually in 10 of the last 12 games, clean sheet against Wolves, last game of the season, clean sheet against Everton. And last year, they only kept back-to-back clean sheet at the Emirates once, when they beat 5-0 Nottingham Forest and 1-0 against Zurich. Strangely, they kept more clean sheets away from home. They kept 12 in the Premier League since the start of the last season, more than any other side. And
Dani,
this is a strange one.
Yeah, just very quickly. It's true, those stats are spot on, but they've got a little bit to do, not a lot to do, but a little bit to do with the fact that Rob Holding was playing the final games of last season too.
Yes.
I think that has something to do. Rob Holding is no longer there. Yesterday, Magallanes and Saliba were there, and the team looks more composed. I'm not taking away anything from your
I agree
reasoning.
I agree with you. And this season also, Saliba didn't start the first few games. But
Yeah.
I think Arsenal... what I like about Arsenal, that they have got in them a never say die attitude. They score a lot of late goals. In 6 matches in 2023, they've scored goals after the 90 minutes. I don't think this is a bit of a coincidence, but also the games are very open, especially when they play at home. They tend to attack with a lot of players. They leave themselves a little bit exposed, but also there is a strong belief in the stadium they can always do it. Now, with Arsenal, the question mark this season is, I'm sure they have improved the team. Obviously, Rice, Havertz, Timber, although he's injured, Raya, they are addition to the team that was already strong last season. Now, it's up to Arteta to make sure the right team is on the pitch every time this season. It all depends on what impact Kai Havertz is going to have, because he's been the biggest signing alongside Rice of this summer, and he should be the one that provides that spark, that creativity, that extra. Now, I don't think that for this game is going to be deployed as a third midfielder alongside Odegaard and Rice, because that leaves Arsenal too exposed. But let's see, because obviously without Martinelli, they might need something else up front. The other question mark is that last season Arsenal was able to do very well in the league, because in the Europa League, Arteta rotated 8-9 players week in and week out. They won't be able to do it this time, because the Champions League is a tougher competition, and they must progress into the knockout stage. So I think that's going to affect the league form and the Champions League form. Let's see how deep is the squad. But as I said, I think this is going to be an open game. There could be over 1.5 goals in the second half. Arsenal have got a tendency of scoring late. I'm going to go for both to score. 184 for Arsenal PSV.
Imagine if they must be in the last 16 round, that Arsenal to win the group is 1.5. The favorite to go through with Arsenal is Sevilla, although it's going to be, I think, very open with PSV. Sevilla really favorite and also very favorite in the game against Lens, probably because Lens, they are awful. They are bottom of the table in France, only 1 point. Last time they played in the Champions League, we have a lot of teams that are not very, they are not often in the Champions League since 2002 was the last time Lens was playing in this competition. Dani, our friend Alem Balnegre was telling us from the beginning of the season that Lens will suffer. They have not strengthened the team. They lost Openda, Fofana in the summer, so it looks very bad for them. On the other side, Sevilla always disappoint us in the Champions League, although I guess we should back them here to win at home.
The progresses of Lens in the last 3 years have been fantastic. They were playing League 2, the second division of France football 3 years ago. And last season, they pushed PSG all the way. They play very good football under Frank Hazen. I don't know what's happening this summer. I don't put it down just to having sold Openda and Fofana, because they replaced him with Y from Montpellier, for example, up front, who looks a good player. And yes, I don't think they, out of a sudden, they become bad players. At the weekend, it was a little bit of a curse. They had 31 shots at home against Metz, couldn't score a single goal. 4th defeat of the season. Last season, they lost 4 games in total in League One. They got beaten recently 3-1 by PSG, 3-0 by Monaco. So it's really, really difficult to understand. They become so bad. But yes, obviously, being a team that is not very experienced in Europe, you could not fancy them going to the Sanchez Pizjuan. However, Sevilla, I don't think they are in a better situation now at the moment. Let's not forget, last season they finished 12 in La Liga. Mendilibar managed to turn it around. They had a very bad spell with Sampaoli. Suso recently said he was the worst manager he's ever had in his life. But they are in turmoil financially and also as a team. You know, Monchi left, financial issues, pretty much haven't sold anybody. Is a very, very old team, average age 28. So what they went and do, they bought Sergio Ramos, obviously to make it better. I mean, obviously, it's a good boost in terms of morale, but you know, Sergio Ramos, you know, is a bit advanced with the age. And I think the biggest loss for Sevilla is to having sold Bono, the goalkeeper, to Saudi Arabia. Last season, he saved them a lot in many games. I think he was a fantastic goalkeeper. But they got on themselves European experience. In the Super Cup against Manchester City, they gave them a very good game. Were knocked out in the group stage of the last season, really bad. So far, 3 defeats, 8 goals conceded. Some players doubtful for this game as well. Navas, Acuna, Marcao. I don't know whether they will be able to recover. 1-1-0 at the weekend against Las Palmas. I can't see them scoring a lot. If anything, I will fancy a double chance for Lens here. I'm going to go for an under, 2.5 goals, 197.
I have the impression, Alvaro, that you are a bit more optimistic with this Sevilla, even if we know all the problems that Dani was enumerating.
Yes, I am, because Daniele was using some information and data that applies to the previous managers more than to Mendilibar, really. How many games has Mendilibar lost as a Sevilla manager? Official games, 5?
5, 6?
6? Seriously, it's not too bad. Not too bad. And I know that Sevilla is not in a great moment. But I think that we also talk about the financial issues of Sevilla. But in Spain, we talk about financial issues constantly because La Liga's financial fair play is very strict. And as soon as you are €1 down, as soon as you have 1 red number in your account, the alarm rings. But that is La Liga's system. But there are so many Premier League teams with a debt. Everton being one of them, for example. They were acquired, they were bought last week, and they've got an over 400 million debt. So there are many teams in La Liga with a bit of a debt because La Liga system flags that and they make it public. So also, I mean, there are many grays to that and many nuances to that. When it comes to Sevilla, look, this is the first time that I can recall that they are going to be They are seeded in their group. This is because now the Europa League winner is seeded, and this is very good for them because normally they face tough opponents in the Europa League, in the Champions League. This time I think that they don't have a friendly group, not at all, but I believe that they got as many chances as PSV and Eindhoven to qualify. It's true that is a veteran side. Sergio Ramos, in my opinion, brings something very good to the team because last season he did well, or he did commendably at PSG, and physically he looked sharp. The other day he started the game. Sevilla won 1-0, clean sheet for Sergio Ramos for Sevilla. The goalkeeper Bono is gone, yes, and I agree with Daniele. He was very good, but he was very heroic as well. Bono was the kind of footballer that in the big moments he delivered. But I think that Dimitrovic, the goalkeeper they've got now, is good as well. I mean, perhaps not as good as Bono, but good enough. Then one of the biggest wins for Sevilla this summer has been keeping Lucas Ocampos. I thought that he was going to leave again. I don't know where, but I thought he was going to leave even to Saudi Arabia, and he's still there. And Luque Bacchio, he scored the winning goal on Sunday, and he seems to be a clever signing, a player that Sevilla doesn't have, very fast as well. So I think that maybe Sevilla can qualify this time. And Lance, as Daniel explained very well, I mean, they are in the Champions League for the first time in 21 years, and this is the worst possible moment for them because they have 1 point out of 15 in France. They conceded in every game. They got the lowest coefficient in the Champions League, and that is down to the fact that they haven't played in Europe for a while now. So I think that Sevilla to win 193 is pretty decent. I could grab that one, but maybe I can lessen it a little bit because I understand that Sevilla has suffered lately with the pace of the Champions League, and this is something that applies to the current squad. So maybe Sevilla with an ace and handicap minus 0.25 will be a good one here, 160.
Lance, by the way, they are usually horrible away from home. Even in the French league, they are not very good when they play away, so it's going to be tough for them playing at Sánchez Pizjuán. Last time they played in a group with Deportivo de La Coruña, Bayern Munich and Milan long time ago, and as Alain Valnegri was telling us, they will struggle this season in Ligue 1 even, and the French football, remember that they only have 2 teams in this Champions League because Olympique Marseille, they lost the playoff. So not great times for French football. Next group, Group C, and here we have Real Madrid in the first place, playing in the early kickoff against Union Berlin, debut in the Champions League. And if you are new in the Champions League, I guess it's a gift going to stadiums like the new Bernabeu. For Union Berlin, lost the last 2 games in the Bundesliga. Alvaro, for Real Madrid, 15 points out of 15, but still conceding a lot of goals. It looks like they enter the games completely switch off, and there are issues there. Of course, no Vinicius, Rodrigo not adding a lot. Still, there are issues for Real Madrid, but they are super favorites, and I guess they should win comfortably, even these kind of games.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to handicap Real Madrid this time because I think that Real Madrid in the Champions League, they provide 90 minutes of consistency, and sometimes in La Liga they wane and they evaporate a little bit during the games, as you have explained very well, Edu. But I think that Real Madrid this time are going to win this game, and even more so, I think that they can inflict not a very heavy defeat, perhaps, to Union Berlin, but definitely a comprehensive defeat. I believe that this Real Madrid side is presenting in La Liga a physical challenge to every side. But in the Champions League, that physical challenge is going to be less so. That physical challenge is basically playing with Camavinga, Tchouaméni, Fede Valverde, who scored a beautiful goal against Real Sociedad, and Jude Bellingham. Playing with those 4 in La Liga is very difficult to handle for La Liga sides. But I want to see that in the Champions League. How does that pan out? And then Joselu is scoring goals, but Joselu's plan, which is working in La Liga and has worked for Spain as well, I want to see how much of a rollout has in the Champions League as well, because the Champions League is a different level, of course. But, generally speaking, I like Real Madrid, and they have been able to find ways of scoring goals without Vinicius and Benzema, who were basically the masters of the 1-2 a couple of years ago. And now They're still scoring. Obviously, that was always going to happen. The goalkeeper Kepa is not as good as Thibaut Courtois, but definitely a decent replacement. And, let's wait and see. I think that there is an expectation for Real Madrid to be very competitive again in the Champions League as they were last season. And I could handicap them with an Asian handicap -1 or even a -1.5 for Real Madrid, really. And I also like Real Madrid winning the second half. Those would be my preferred bets in this game. And a couple of quick notes about Union Berlin. Just very fast. I mean, since winning the promotion to the Bundesliga for the first time in 2019, this team has improved their qualification in the Bundesliga year after year. They are improving. In the first season, they finished 11th. In their fourth season, they finished in Champions League spots. It's true that now they are 8th in the Bundesliga. They are having their debut in the group stage of the Champions League. I wonder if, players like Rani Khedira will be available, for example. I don't know about that. They've got a few players out and some other that were unregistered in the Champions League, like Hollerbach, for example, who thought he was going to be there. But anyway, Kaufmann is also out of the Champions League squad. But still, maybe this is too much of a challenge for Union Berlin. So, as I said before, I'm going to back Real Madrid, and the highest I can go is for an Asian handicap -1.5 for Real Madrid.
The only thing, Dani, is that Real Madrid, I still remember, of course, that game against Sheriff Tiraspol, no? But even last season, they struggled a little bit against Shakhtar, against Leipzig. They are way better. They know Real Madrid have never been eliminated in the group stages of the Champions League, and this is the only doubt, no? Maybe they start very slow, these kind of games.
But then last year they cruised up to the semi-finals and they got unstuck against Manchester City. So I think, yes, they will qualify from this group, also because Napoli at the moment, they don't look great. But this could be a tricky start, I think, for Real Madrid. Let's not forget this is the last campaign for Ancelotti. The cracks in the squad, I think, last season emerged. They finished 10 points behind Barcelona. And it wasn't a perfect Barcelona. They didn't really challenge for the title last season. We mentioned the injuries they got, but the acquisition of Jude Bellingham has been a fantastic piece of business. He looks inevitable. He looks always like scoring or contributing to goals. The problem with Real Madrid at the moment is that, of course, we'll have to see how do they do in the Champions League without the likes of Benzema and Vinicius. It is a tough month for Real Madrid, 7 games in 3 weeks. And at the moment, excluding the goalkeepers and with a few injuries they got, I think they only got 15 players of movements available. Mendy and Ceballos might return soon. Let's see what they do. And obviously, this is going to be a bit more difficult for them after the international breaks. They had more people out in international duty. So things you have to consider, a little bit of fatigue as well. But for Union Berlin, I think there are 2 factors you need to consider here to assess whether they could progress to the next round. First of all, they will play at the Olympiastadion in Berlin, big stadium, UCL standard. But is this a good thing rather than playing in the home ground of the under Alten Fosterey, people will excuse my pronunciation, where they make it more of a fortress, they make it more of an hostile environment, moving to the big stadium. I remember when Spurs were playing at Wembley in the Champions League, or when Arsenal were playing at Wembley in the Champions League years ago, it wasn't quite the same. And the second thing you might have to consider against Union Berlin, which you always have to be wary, last season in Bundesliga, they only scored 51 goals, 9th best attack, didn't score many, and also progressed through the Europa League stages by scoring very few goals. Now, in Champions League is different. You need to score. You need to win games by outscoring oppositions, the likes of Napoli or Real Madrid. You can't just expect to keep clean sheet in such a tough group. So I'm always a little bit aware when teams with such poor records offensively come into such difficult groups. They're a good side. The likes of Juranovic, Gosens, so they go from Inter, a very 2 wing-backs. Gosens, by the way, already 2 goals. Aronson in the middle, good seasons with Leeds, is a good international for US. And Bonucci, Leonardo Bonucci at the back after his polemic exit from Juventus. They got a bit of depth.
Is he going to play, though?
I think he will.
Bonucci. Let's see. He hasn't played yet, right?
I think he's in the Champions League list. He should be playing.
Yeah.
He lacks much fitness because he hasn't played for Juventus at all. But I think we'll see him featuring in the group for sure. So it adds to the squad, it adds to the depth. They got also Volland, Siebachu. But yes, the beginning of the season has not been great. Defeated 3-0 by Leipzig, lost 2-1 at the weekend against Wolfsburg, won the 2 games at home. Last season, knocked out Ajax out of the Europa League, then lost to Union Saint-Gilloise. I don't know, but maybe they could make life difficult for Real Madrid. Maybe initially, I see the value here on a first half double chance, X2, 202, but maybe Real Madrid wins in the second half.
Well, Real Madrid to win from behind, I want to highlight this, is 9.5 best spot. So perhaps it's a good one. It already happened 3 times in La Liga. And in this group, we also have Braga, Napoli. Dani, you mentioned the problems for Napoli. They drew, and thanks God, in Genoa, because they were losing 2-0, already dropped points also at home, lost against Lazio, so not the best start for Rudy Garcia. Also, Braga, they have not started properly the season in the Portuguese league.
Definitely more pressure under Rudy Garcia, and more pressure now because he needs to show what he can give, what he can add to this team. We know Napoli have got a very strong starting 11, they got fantastic players and a very good pedigree of attacking, expansive football under Spalletti. But now with the new manager, Rudy Garcia, what he's going to add to this side? They cannot just rest on their laurels. And in the first couple of weeks, they seem to have lost the hunger, that spark. You look at players like Kvaratskhelia, they've been injured, but still in the last 2 games, they haven't affected the game much. They cannot just look it up and throw it to Osimhen. And obviously, they are missing something at the back. Look, last season, Juan Jesus would not have started 3 or 4 consecutive games in Serie A. But now without Kim and with the new replacement, Nathan, the Brazilian from Leipzig, not playing, he is the starter, Juan Jesus, and he's not quite to the level. He partnered with Ostigard at the weekend, and Napoli really struggled. Lindstrom, who they got from Eintracht Frankfurt, don't have a lot of experience in Europe. Probably at the moment, the most informed two are Osimhen and Raspadori, but can they feed them in the 4-3-3? Now, these are worrying times, maybe not yet for Napoli, but certainly they do need a reaction. Last season, away from home in the Champions League were great. 3 wins, Rangers, Ajax, Eintracht, 2 defeats though against Milan and Liverpool. Yes, they equalized against Genoa thanks to the wonder goals. You can tell they're missing something. They need a little bit more composure. They are lucky though because they played Braga, who I think they are not a side that should really lay a glove on them. This is the first participation in the Champions League in 10 years. They have strengthened the team with the likes of Jose Fonte and João Moutinho, 39 years old and 36 years old respectively. Ronnie Lopez, Bruma from Fenerbahce in the league. 2 wins, 1 draw, 2 defeats, lost at the weekend. Are they good enough to challenge for the title in Portugal? I don't think so. Last season they finished 3rd in the league, then beat Bakatopola and Panathinaikos comfortably in the route to the Champions League. One to look for, of course, Abel Ruiz, Spain under 21, did really well in the summer. And then you got the 2 Horta's brother, André Ricardo Horta, but they've been stuck at Braga forever. Maybe if they were that good, Benfica would have snatched them at some point. Napoli win for me, 190.
Well, this is a classic team from the Europa League, Alvaro, Braga, and perhaps, as Dani said, no, they don't have the level to play in the Champions League, but let's see.
Not my favorite, Abel Ruiz. Anyway, not my favorite.
It wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad.
Well, basically, I mean, probably the last picture I've got of King was missing that penalty against England.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, no, he's not a bad footballer. I just think that he will never be an elite striker. But the analysis of Daniele is spot on. Napoli is not the same team they were last season. I wonder if they will recover that mojo, if they will be able to resuscitate the magic of last season. It's not going to be easy, of course. What happened to Napoli was a delicate balance last season. You needed all the pieces working, and as soon as a couple of them fall down and disappear, like for example the likes of Kim, obviously that balance, which was very delicate, is gone. And I don't think that Napoli is going to be as good as they were last season, but still I think that they can be competitive in the group stage, definitely. And let's see what they do. Perhaps getting a few good results now in September brings their confidence upwards a little bit. When it comes to Braga, look, there is a thing that points me in the direction of both teams to score. The fact that they have been only scoreless 3 times at home in 2023, this calendar year. Of course, they were scoreless against the top opposition, twice against Porto, once against Fiorentina. By the way, Fiorentina thrashed them last season, as far as I can remember.
Totally.
They did it. Braga comes from the playoff. Obviously, they've got less pedigree than Napoli right now. But yeah, both teams to score is something that I like here. 167 with maybe Ricardo Horta, if he features, check the team, obviously. And then Napoli with the scoring capacity they've got. I think that both teams to score. Maybe you can find that value of 170 very, very appealing for you.
And let's move on to the next group, Group D, still with a Portuguese side. Here, Benfica, Red Bull, Salzburg. Here we have Inter as the main favorite to top the group. And then I think it's very open. Benfica, they were brilliant. Alvaro, last season in the Champions League, remember they were finishing first in their group, a group with PSG and Juventus. They lost Gonzalo Ramos in the summer, but I don't know if they've lost something else, or is a team that we should take a look carefully and place our bets on them. They are super favorites for the bookies for this game.
Well, I think that we have to take them seriously, at least in the group stage. I really think so. And you know, Salzburg away from home, they have never been a power force really in the Champions League. Last season they suffered, and their last win in the group stage, the last away win in the group stage of the Champions League away was against Brøndby, and that was in 2021. And that was in the playoffs to qualify for the Champions League. So Salzburg away from home are totally different to Salzburg at home. Salzburg at home, they are a serious side. But away from home, they are not. Not that I want to disrespect them, but I mean, like football speaking, this side relies a lot on what they do in Austria, that's for sure. And they are playing against Benfica. And look, Benfica topped the group last season. They had different players. They had Enzo Fernandez in the group stage. They also had Gonzalo Ramos, of course, but they still keep good players. For example, Rafa Silva, for me, is fantastic. I mean, he has scored 3 goals and he has assisted 3 times this season. This guy who relinquished playing for Portugal because he wants to focus on his club, and, you know, he's playing really well for Benfica. Di Maria has scored already 4 goals. They've got a new goalkeeper, Trubin. Let's see how he does. And new footballers, because some others left. Grimaldo left, Weigl left, Gonzalo Ramos left, and Blachodimos left. But they had a net spend of 46 million because they invested a lot of money this summer just to compensate the absences, because they feel they got Orkun Kotsku. Then this one is probably the biggest candidate to replace Enzo Fernandez, something they didn't do in winter very well. They got Jurasek, they got Cabral from Fiorentina, who scored 8 goals in the Conference League last season. Then the goalkeeper Trubin, Bernat and Gonzalo Guedes are on loan. So yeah, they are still powerful. Di Maria is there. So I'm going to back Benfica. Benfica to win 147. Benfica to win and over 1.5 goals in the game, 162 is my favorite one here. And individually speaking, has to be Rafa Silva to score or assist, which pays over 2, because he has scored 3 goals and provided 3 assists this season. And there is a very interesting one here. If you trust on Benfica's defense, by the way, with Otamendi as the leader still, both teams to score, no, 245. But that's not for me, because at the end of the day, Salzburg has good attackers. But Benfica to win and over 1.5 goals in the game, 162, I love it.
Even without Odysseas Blachodimos, a goalkeeper that Alvaro likes a lot. By the way, I'm checking, and he was born in Germany, not in Greece. He was born in Stuttgart.
I didn't know that.
But this is a good piece of news. Salzburg, leader of the great Austrian league, Dani.
It's a conveyor belt, Salzburg, all these RB, Leipzig, Salzburg, of course, they got Bragantino in Brazil, of talent, but you never know what you're going to get because they change all the time. And especially Salzburg, because they are in between Leipzig and Bragantino, is when all the talent comes and goes, stay 1 year and leave without Sesko, without Sesko. They haven't got Sesko, they haven't got Okafor. The coach, Yaisle, moved to Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of changes every year, but they seem to find a way to be competitive. Now this season, all the eyes are on Karim Konate. Oscar Gluck, who plays in Israel, who's a good player, and Nicolas Capaldo. They kept him in Argentina, scored against Roma last season in the Europa League. Rocco Simic, the son of Dario Simic, former Champions League winner with Milan, Forson, 20 years old winger. Last year, Salzburg, they were a decent side. They beat Dinamo Zagreb 1-0. That was the only victory, but they scored in 5 out of 6 group games with Chelsea and Milan and never looked quite close to qualifying. So far in Austria, 7 games, 6 games, 1 wins, 1 draw the weekend, 2 against Sturm Graz. You can't judge them on their domestic form. Benfica, on the other hand, last season, at times, they were one of the teams that played the best football in Europe, and they came unstuck against Inter because I think they lacked experience. I remember they playing with Antonio Silva and Morato at the back, both young. Otamendi was missing the first leg against Inter. Inter were much able to start them out of possession, but obviously the more they play in Europe, the more experience they gain. I think Benfica wins this pretty comfortably, I would say. I'm gonna go for under 3 goals, 191. If there are 3 goals in the game, you get your money back.
Salzburg, they are a classic lately in the Champions League. Last season, they were out of the group stage, but they were in a tough group with Milan and Chelsea. And the last game is Real Sociedad Inter. Dani, I have to say that I am a bit disappointed. I expected you to wear the Nerazzurri t-shirt for this game, for this video.
Why? No, why would I? Why would I?
No, it is normal for Inter beating Milan. It's happening.
5 derbies. Yeah, we won 5 derbies in a row.
5 derbies in a row. So it's a good moment to start again the Champions League. Last season, we were saying Inter always disappointing Europe. It's not the case. Of course, we are talking about the runners-up of the competition. And with some good additions in the summer. What a goal. Thuram scored against Milan. Later, Alvaro will tell you the problems that Inter might face against Real Sociedad, but it's difficult not to go for this. Inter to win is 2.5 for Asian Handicap 0 for Inter. Looks great, to be honest.
Inter are in a great moment, and they started the season so well. 4 wins out of 4. Thrashed Milan 5-1, and yes, I mean, it's becoming a bit like Barcelona Espanyol, really. I mean, it's a derby 1-2, or maybe Bayern Munich 1860, something like that. I mean, the jokes apart, Inter have been dominant, and Inter have been dominant, and credit to Inzaghi for 2 things. For the entire week in Italy, there's been a press, a media campaign to make sure Davide Frattesi, who scored 2 goals in the game against Ukraine, is a midfielder, should have started Derby. Is one of the signings of the season. Everyone said Frattesi should start instead of Mkhitaryan. Give space to.
I think you were part also of this pressure.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I said, let's see if Inzaghi starts him. I didn't say he should start. I was thinking he should have started Mkhitaryan, who is an amazing footballer and scored 2 against Milan. Of course, in the second half, Frattesi...
Yes. How many protein shakes is Frattesi having? He's very ripped, man.
He's very muscular, but incredible. He's incredible. He's a mini Hulk. He's not very
yeah.
But he scored. Very good time into the box, came into the second half. So credit to Inzaghi for resisting the pressure, sticking to the system he knows. And in a way, I have to say, Simone Inzaghi, who 7 months ago was close to get sacked, has turned it around completely. He has changed by remaining the same. I explain. Inter plays always the same way, 3-5-2. But they got different patterns of play now. They can play short passes, they can play long passes, switches of plays. They are good on the counter. Milan had at times 70% of the ball, did nothing with it, and Inter knew they could actually hurt them on the wide areas with Dumfries, who's having a very good season so far, with Di Marco, and with Thuram, which I must say is being completely transformed. I had my doubts about him because I never see him playing as a striker. I always see him playing as a winger. But really, he's being really, really good physically and technically. Massive confidence for Inter at the moment. Having reached the Champions League final last season has boosted everyone's morale. Let's not forget, Inter have changed 12 players in the summer, but at the moment, we only saw Sommer and Thuram starting. There will be time for Pavard, for Klassen, for Frattesi, and for Quadrado, etc., Arnautovic, but probably not for this game. Last year away, 1 defeat for Inter at Bayern when they were already qualified, 3 wins, 2 draws. Real Sociedad, I leave it to Alvaro the analysis. I just have to say, I watched them last season against Roma. They didn't impress me. Same idea I got a little bit about Union Berlin. They don't score many goals. They don't have a lot of goal scorers, only scored 51 goals last season in the Liga. The top goal scorer was Sorlot. They sold it to Villarreal. Sadiq has not played the entire season, but I know they got a very good midfield and a very good technical players there. For me, anyway, is a goals game, over 2.5 goals, 187, only 2 goals in the game. You get half stake back.
Talking about good players, we saw Kubo, for instance, one of our favorite players, Alvaro, playing great at Bernabeu Sunday.
Incredible first half by Kubo. I mean, we spoke about this in the previous show, La Liga show. But one thing that Kubo has added to his game is that now he's not only a nice player to watch, but he also has an impact in the scoreline, and he's playing really well. Look, good analysis by Daniele, especially about Inter. I mean, I like Inter last season, and I'm going to take a bit of credit for this. I said clearly that Inter had the best squad in Italy. And I still keep that. I mean, they are definitely the best squad in there. I don't know if the signings have been an upgrade or a downgrade. Onana, Sommer, Skriniar, and Cousins left, and then Pavard, Cuadrado, and Acerbi, who is now property of Inter de Milan, are there. Then Brozovic for Klaassen. Obviously, that's a downgrade, in my opinion. Checo leaves, Thuram, Alexis, Arnautovic arrive. So, many changes, but the team is still pretty good. And last season, they conceded 1 in 6 games on the road to the final, in the knockout. I think that Inter knows what the secret is in the Champions League very clearly. And Real Sociedad, look, they haven't played in the Champions League since the 13-14 season. They've got a better pedigree in the European Cup than people know. And people know in Spain as well. And since I am from Bilbao and I support Athletic de Bilbao, maybe my parents omitted this thing from me, but Real Sociedad, the year Athletic Club Bilbao won the league with Clemente in '83, Real Sociedad that season reached the European Cup semi-final. So they have been there up to the last stages, but in the last Champions League, they didn't do too well. That was in 2014. But, they got a good team. At Santiago Bernabeu, they played a very good first half, but in the second half, they couldn't cope with Real Madrid, maybe accuracy when it came to scoring. I also think that Real Sociedad is missing massively a player like David Silva. Had David Silva been at Santiago Bernabeu, the second half would have been different. But David Silva broke his ACL and he retired from football. Very concerning, the form of Mikel Oyarzabal. He's been awful and he was terrible at Santiago Bernabeu. I don't understand why he played so long. But generally speaking, they are competitive. They know how to defend well. Lenormand has started three straight games for Spain, and I think he feels now that he's a referential defender in Spanish football too. And I think that, they are competitive. They know how to put a fight. And for this reason, and knowing that Inter knows how to speculate as well, and maybe just a draw for them can be good enough, I'm not going to take many risks here. This could be easily a pass for me. I'm sorry to be a downer. But if I go for something, I will go for the second half to have more goals than the first half, because I know that at the beginning, Real Sociedad will be cautious. So that pays 2.1.
Well, in this group, Inter are favorites, of course, and then Benfica to qualify with, Benfica to win the group is 3.5, Real Sociedad to win the group is 6.2, so it's not going to be easy for Real Sociedad to qualify in this group with Inter and Benfica, much more experience. Even Salzburg, they are more experienced in the Champions League than Real Sociedad. Well, let's finish the video. Dani, your best bet, safe bet?
Benfica to win at home, 147.
Against Salzburg, Alvaro?
Real Madrid to win, 141.
There you go.
I like that one. And Alvaro, your ACCA was correct in La Liga, if I'm not mistaken. Late goals. With late goals, for instance, Villarreal beating Almeria, Sevilla also winning 1-0. Your ACCA for this Wednesday?
Well, and there is still an ACCA pending. If Atletico beats Sevilla and that's suspended game, you win your money. But anyway, Asian handicap minus 1.25 for Real Madrid, Bayern to win, and Benfica to win. Altogether, 432.
Probably that one is already won, and the bookies give you the ACCA without the game, actually. Probably it should happen. Dani, on the other hand, had some trust on Napoli. Are you trusting Napoli again, Dani?
I am, and I'm putting in my ACCA. Real Madrid, Union Berlin, over 1.5 goals. Arsenal, PSV Eindhoven, over 2.5 goals. Braga, Napoli, double chance, X2. Sevilla, Lens, double chance in the first half, X2. Total odds, 389.
Thank you, Dani, Alvaro. I hope, guys, you enjoyed the video. If it's the case, don't forget, just press the like and subscribe. And now, bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye.